Welcome everyone to this session. I'm glad to spend a little time with you today. We're expecting to relay some interesting and valuable information to you today, and we're looking forward to it. I'm going to introduce our panelists in a minute, but before I do that, I just want to remind everyone here that there are going to be a couple of polling questions that are going to pop up during this session. That is to be expected. Please participate and quickly, and then we'll share our results at the end. And also, even better, at the end of the session, we're going to do a lightning round with some quick questions. And the folks that answer fast and that we're paying attention will get a prize. So prizes for quizzes at the end. Great. And so with that, I'd like to introduce my esteemed panelists. We have with us folks from a couple different C3PAO organizations that serve the defense industrial base ecosystem. We have Kelly Kendall from KNC Strategic Services. We have Thomas Graham from Redspin and Robert Teague from Redspin. Also, really lucky to have these folks with us. They're very knowledgeable in this space. They've done dozens of assessments on the CMMC standard, including some on Prevail customers, among many other companies as well. So happy to have them here, and thank you all for joining. I am going to share a few slides, exactly 55, no, just 5. And then we will use those as a guide through our conversations today. But mostly this is going to be the panelists sharing their vast expertise that they have achieved in performing all of these real world assessments. So today will be a bit of a show and tell based on a true story. So this is a little bit of a true crime drama here. And with that, I'm going to get us started. This is a true story. The names have been changed to protect the innocent, of course. And this is a company that was a small, mid-sized business that was a machine shop using Prevail. And they are seeking CMMC Level 2 certification. And they performed their scoping exercise. And they then went on to create a 17-page system security plan to define their program. So we're going to go through that system security plan through its evolution. So it started off, with their initial effort, which, as you may expect, fell a little short of meeting our requirements for the standard. And this initial program, when it was pre-assessed, obtained a score of 29 out of our 110 score. So that could have been worse because the scores start at negative 205. But they ended up with 29. They engaged an assistant or an advisor to help them. They got through the improvements to their SSP and included the missing elements. And we're going to explore the do's and don'ts for a great system security plan. So our panelists are going to help comment along the way and look and tell us all about what they look for when they are assessing a program, especially based on a system security plan. So the system security plan is the main document that defines the program that's implemented. It's really the guide that the assessor is going to follow as they go to make sure and verify that the program that's implemented is operating and has all the controls implemented and operating as intended, and also matches the description they were provided in the system security plan. So this is a super important document, and we're going to go through some of the things we found with this particular one. So starting off with, there you are, button. Starting off with, what are a few of the things they did right? So they did, we're just some excerpts from this SSP, the original version. And they did do some things right. They followed some of the standard elements that are supposed to be included in the system security plan. And I think I'm going to start things off with just form and format. Let's start with Kelly saying what do you like about the form and format of this SSP, even if it was missing some content. What are some of the good elements about how they approached the overall document?
Sure, thanks, Greg. One of the things when we're at the very starting stage of an assessment, we're doing an assessment scoping call. And the SSP is one of the things we look at the readiness assessment, but often we get a chance to look at it even in the scoping call. And I can tell you within about 5 seconds of glancing at an SSP beginning like this, whether it looks like it's going to be good or it looks like it's going to be a disaster, because you can tell some things really quickly. Like you said, 17-page length, that right there, big red flag. You know that's going to be really bad. But the things that we look at too are, does it have a version? Does it have a date? Is it signed? Those are some fundamental things that we look at quickly to get an idea. But we start looking at it saying, does it look like it has the information we're going to need to be able to determine what we need to determine during the assessment? So the beginning of the SSP, those first few pages are really important because they're giving us a lot of information. They're telling your story to us because we come in blind. We don't know anything. The assessor starts out, they know nothing about you. Often this might be the very first thing that they see about you. And so they're starting out with your SSP, tell them your story, tell them about what they're going to be assessing. And like this is good because one of the things we picked up on is it has the SSP name, it has a version number on there. Now, jokingly, I would be a little bit worried if I see version 1.0. Okay, I mean, not joking, because that's going to tell me it's only been done once. It's never been reviewed, revised, never been changed. If the date's over a year, that's a red flag. But if the date was 2 weeks ago, oh, okay, understand. Maybe that's a little late to do it, but hey, whatever you want to do before your assessment. So that's one of the things. I think I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder on here, so I think I'll pause. Do you want to let some of the other guys jump in?
Yeah, please. Yeah, Robert, I think next let's go to you and tell us what you found in particular about the system description and the users and the way they documented kind of the overall system.
Was that for me, Greg? I
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah,
I was
please.
coughing. I don't know if it was from this SSP or yeah, no, the everything that Kelly just kind of highlighted is definitely the same things that caught my eye when we first looked at this. I will tell you, I like the system categorization matrix they got in here. So it really kind of breaks down what different areas within the organization that are captured within the system security plan. And it's got a great general description of what the environment's like. Those picture of how the organization is operating. Obviously, backing up to the scoping call, that's where we want you to share your network diagram with us, which by the way is missing here, but and just kind of explain to us how data is coming in and out of the environment, what you guys do for the DoD, because the more information you can give us about your business, the better we can provide the assessment for you. But those are along with everything that Kelly stated, those two, the categorization and the general system description, are the other main items that I look for. Thomas?
Yeah, maybe Thomas, give us a little more color around the technical environment in particular.
Oh, you want color. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of color to provide right now. But when you're looking at these and when you're looking at the environments, keep in mind the requirements for an actual CMMC assessment. It's adequacy and sufficiency. So when you're talking about your system environment, your system users, yes, most folks do a great job talking about their CUI assets, their CUI users. Where they fall short is generally ensuring that they're putting that how information in there for security protection assets, for instance. SPAs or security protection assets, they're a part of the assessment. They're held accountable to any of the 110 that apply to them. I probably should say any of the 320 objectives that apply to them. That also includes ESPs. If you're outsourcing to an ESP, that's still technically part of your environment to a certain extent. It's an extension of your environment. So whose responsibility is what? Have you identified that in the system description to indicate what is being outsourced and whose responsibility it is?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. A couple other things they did right. They, in addition to capturing their system and their environment, they also did document some control relationships, inheritance to the systems that they did identify, and some of the other categorizations they provided for the elements of their data, of the different data types.
You like that tease, didn't you, Greg? That's what we in the business call a tease before you go to the next slide.
Exactly. But so I think we're going to move on to what was missing in a minute, but I just any other comments from the panel on, we've talked a little bit about the things you guys look for at the front of the SSP and a little bit around the system definition. We've kind of already alluded to the missing diagram, but what, before we get into what's not here, what other overarching elements do you think belong in an SSP before we get into all the missing parts? Things
Well,
that, yeah.
well, but
Go ahead,
well,
Tom.
before we punt it to you, Rob, just tagging on to what I was just saying, Greg, that the very first image over here on the left, this is kind of the overview of that inheritance that I was mentioning. If I had to be a nitpicker and add something else to it, I would say add an additional column there indicating who you're inheriting it from. Are you inheriting from your parent? Is it a specific, ESP type vendor? Reason being is because guess what? Your assessors on the back end have to identify that specifically for EMAS. And that's a good way to get on your assessor's good side, because now they don't have to start going digging for that information, let alone now you've identified, whose responsibility that is for, whoever moves into your slot, Greg, whenever you win the lottery and go to Bora Bora.
Yep. Yeah. So some of the other things I see that somebody in the chat kind of locked in onto it. It's the inherited chart there. I really like that. That's one of the things we look for is what is inherited versus what isn't, especially if you're using a CSP, that cloud service provider such as Prevail. So we want to know what items they're responsible for versus what the client is responsible for. Now, we can always go out to the client responsibility matrix to see that. And at some point, we do review that to get the details. But by having this chart in the SSP, it straight up calls it out for us, and we don't really have to go to the CRM right away. So that's a definite plus. The other thing I liked was that they listed some of the users and software that is being utilized within the environment. But caution on the users, by listing that in the system security plan, plus you should have your policies and procedures. Anytime you list somebody and be very descriptive in the SSP, that's going to have to cause you to go back and change and update that when new users come into the environment, which should be often, because a trend we've kind of seen is those that are already CMMC certified are starting to pick up a lot of contracts, and thus the business is expanding. So definitely your user base will expand with that. So I would kind of avoid listing out by name the users. I would rather reference them out to a different document where they can see that, or some evidence, for the assessment part. Kelly, anything else?
That's like a perfect segue to what I was thinking about is your SSP is a roadmap. It's really important that your SSP is the gospel to us. Anything else you have, point to it from your SSP. It's really, really important that you do this. If it's a policy, I see some of the chats talking about this. Point to a policy, point to a procedure, point to a document, point to whatever. Have it in your SSP. It's a great roadmap, and assessors, one, look for that, and two, will be very happy with you, too, if you do that. So you can say, like, even in an implementation statement, if it's an inheritance, we inherited this from Microsoft. See the shared responsibility matrix for Microsoft. A simple statement like that versus typing the entire thing about what Microsoft might do within your SSP, simplify. But point is really, really important. And then I was also thinking about with this matrix that's in here, it's helpful. But when I think about inheritance and shared responsibility, I think it's a lot more important of the ESPs being really, really well described in here, because a CSP is a lot more easy. It's FedRep, it's Microsoft, there's an SRM, we know what they do, we know what you have to do. What's your customer responsibility? That's going to be in there. Have you done it? That's a lot easier. It's the ESPs, which are MSPs and MSSPs. Those are a lot more intricate, because it might be your managed service provider that is doing having all of your auditing for you, and they're responsible for log management or whatever it may be. That's where it's a lot more important to have it really well broken down for an ESP. because it's not as simple as just like a FedRAMP inheritance. It's going to be way more shared responsibility or customer responsibility. Inheritance to me, I always think of as just full inheritance. Can you fully inherit it? Okay, it's inheritable. I don't really like doing partially inheritable because I don't really, just terminology, I just don't like it. So that's personal opinion, but yeah, I think that's another area where that could have been improved, and that would definitely help an assessor. Pointing out, oh, and then one thing I want to say about length, because I saw this in the chat too. Super short length is a red flag. Super long length doesn't really matter to us. If we see a 600-page SSP, we might get a little nervous, but it's not necessarily about the length as much as it's about having the right content. So if we can quickly see, okay, they've got their preamble, which is what I call this whole thing before you have all your implementation statements for all your controls. You have this introduction, your preamble, we read through that. Then you have your super long spreadsheet version attached to your preamble, and now you're at 260 pages. That's fine. It doesn't matter as long as the content is there. If you have it separated, I've seen this on an assessment, kind of like this, very similar to this one, but wasn't this one, where it was a 17-page SSP, not signed, and then there was a spreadsheet elsewhere. You can't call that an SSP. It wasn't combined, signed, and made as a final document. So, and I saw someone else mention about versioning. I think versioning is really critical. I don't know if it's necessarily a requirement per se, but it always gets asked. It gets asked by us from DigCac. It gets asked in the EMAS system we're uploading it to. What's the SSP name? What version is it? What's the date of it? So I think versioning, in my opinion, would be a requirement. It's not an official one, but I would highly recommend you version your documents, including your SSP. Okay, I'm done.
And Kelly, that is a perfect setup for what went wrong here. So
boom.
So we can read these bullets, but I want to pick them apart in terms of using your expertise and what you've seen, both good and bad, and documentations in the real world and programs implemented in the real world. The things you look for, the things people that stand out as particularly good way to approach any of these sections. We just talked about document control, so review, change log, doing revision control, certainly important, even if not specifically required. It's just best practice for any kind of document that's going to be iterated over time, right? Mm-hmm. So that one I think Kelly is already spoken to. So let's look at some of the other ones, like the diagrams. Who wants to jump in and talk about what kind of diagrams we should be seeing here?
Oh, well, how much time do you have, Greg?
we have about 20 more minutes.
All right. So first thing, folks, I'm looking at the chat. Great information, great conversation. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A. That's the only way that we can respond to you. As far as the diagrams that you're looking for in the SSP, you gotta put in there what's in scope, that boundary. What is the elements in your network that pertain to this SSP? Yes, it says system, but understand system in this context is the scope of the environment. That includes desktops, laptops, servers, printers, scanners, mobile phones, routers, switches, whatever else. You got to make sure that they're in there. But then more importantly, also make sure that your data flows are captured either in that diagram or a separate diagram. Guess what? That plays into 313 right off the bat. That helps identify to your assessors how you are going about controlling the flow of your CUI. Also, don't forget, you need to include your external connections, because that also plays into that AC family. And you could potentially have security data going in and out of your network, but maybe CUI if you're dealing with a CSP, but indicating how that's going in and out. Now, when you start getting to external connections, talking about boundary protections, towards the tail end of the assessment, you can very easily and clearly point to where those egress and ingress points are and explain how You are limiting, controlling, defining, specifying whatever those key words are for those data flows in and out of your network. Rob, Kelly, I don't know if you disagree, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, definitely concur with all of that. I'll jump on to the next one. This is something I typically remind folks any opportunity that I get. Um, there are 110 requirements and 320 objectives. Your documents should go to the objective level. It's the objectives the assessors are going to ask the questions on, because how you answer those paints the overall compliance of the requirement that those objectives are tied to. Be straight, direct, concise, and to the point. If it asks you, do you have a deny all rule in the boundary firewall? Yes, we have a deny all rule in the boundary firewall. See page blah, blah, blah of the SC documents or procedures, whichever. So make sure you're referencing them out, as Kelly mentioned earlier. But that's the biggest kicker that we see, is a lot of folks will just address the requirement and totally skip over the objectives. Make sure that's objectives are what you're answering. And we should see all 320 objectives in the documentation. Kelly?
I'm thinking about a couple of different things. One, things going through the chat, but also I'm remembering from some assessments, and so I want to kind of horror stories, super short, is if you're going to use a template, doesn't matter who it's coming from, if you're going to use a template, don't just look at how they fill things out and assume that's the best way to fill things out. A vendor may make a SSP based on their system, their service, their whatever they're doing for you. It's very important that you break down in your section by assessment objective, like we're just saying, and answer each assessment objective individually, because that's what the assessors are looking for. I've seen it all combined in a paragraph. It's really helpful to answer each one individually. The other one I'm thinking about, there's a lot of great comments. I'm having fun just watching the chat almost more than talking, and I got to pay attention. But it's fun. There's a lot of great comments going through here.
Yeah.
But the question about signatures, I saw someone mention about where is the requirement for an authorized official to sign, and I'm thinking about looking that up. But what I want to say to it is, how can you say your SSP is final and approved if it's not signed by an official, affirming official, as we call it in the business, if you will? So how can you say it's approved if it hasn't been signed off on? How is it official? So I don't know if there's an actual control and objective that specifically states it off the top of my head, if you guys could think of it. But I saw someone comment on that about, where does it specifically state that? I think it talks more about having it approved. That was the most important things I was thinking of.
Right.
Oh, and if you use a template, don't use a template from a different framework. I've seen that. Use 800-171. Don't use another one. I'm not going to say more because I don't want to wrongly about an assessment that went bad because of it, but just make sure you're using 800-171 Rev 2, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't jump to Rev 3 yet. It's going to take a while for that to come into the CMMC program. There's ways the DoD is already looking at Rev 3. They know it's out there. They know they need to get to it. But right now, remember, this program is still new. It's just starting up off the ground. So that's why they tied it to Rev 2, so everybody could get their feet planted. And then as the program grows, we'll shift into the latest versions.
Excellent. Yeah, great comments for everybody. We're gonna take the remaining time we have before we get to our lightning round with prizes and go through some of the summary information. A lot of this has probably been coming in terms of the chat questions, and we're probably also, some of this have been alluded to or mentioned before, but I think it's really just, let's look at what they learned. Like, what did Mike's learn when they hired an advisor and that advisor told them to change their system security plan in many ways to get them to their 110 score? I call that system security plan essentials, right? But you guys look at it as just best practices and a system security plan you can interpret and work with in an assessment, which is really important. I would also say, just editorially, the advice we give folks that are working on their internal documentation is think about the assessment as you're generating your documentation formatting to make it easier for them. So the easier you make your documentation for the assessor, the easier they're going to be able to follow it, and the easier they're going to be able to verify the elements that are within. So when Robert was talking about, documenting to the objective, that's kind of what he was saying in my mind, is make sure you're documenting in a way that the assessor can quickly understand how you implement each objective under each control. And then they can do their validation and move in a very efficient manner. If they have to go sleuth things out from 10 different documents, you're going to make their work harder, and the assessment will not go as smoothly. So that's just, free advice from my experience working with a lot of companies that are in the process of doing this work. But yeah, let's go back to our panel and say, hey, what more color can we add around these critical elements that we've identified in our talk today? These SSP essentials, anything else you can offer kind of in our last 10 or 15 minutes here that you would want to leave our audience with?
So,
yeah, Thomas always starts with dreams heavily. So,
yeah, I mean, that definitely helps. But honestly, Greg, two things, and then I'll shut up and I'll let Rob and Kelly talk. First thing is, guys, an SSP is not an attestation document. I'm going to say it again. It is not an attestation document. Simply putting statements in there that, yes, so such and such company authorizes all of their users. It's not going to cut it. You got to have that how information in there. The second thing, and this speaks to something that gives assessors a red flag, you really want to give them a warm and fuzzy. Absolutely do not copy and paste text verbatim from one objective to the other. I know a lot of them look familiar. The objectives are different. So if I see the same information in a define objective that I do in a control objective, that's going to throw up a red flag and be like, do you really understand what you're doing for this objective, or are you just copying and pasting and hoping the shotgun approach works? So there's my 2 cents. Robert, Kelly.
well,
Go ahead,
again,
Robert.
yeah, again, the system security plan is, as Greg kind of mentioned, it's like the heart of your documentation. That is the main document we're going to leverage to conduct the assessment. Now, during the objective evidence review, which is phase one, we're going to go back and we're going to take a look at your SSP. If it references us to a policy and a procedure, we're going to go look there just to make sure that trail doesn't keep leading us to other documents and other documents and other documents. So make sure you contain how many documents these go to. Last thing for you, remember these documents are for your users. They're the ones that have to read these policies and procedures to understand the do's and don'ts of the particular secure environment you're leveraging. So keep it in layman's terms. Don't use college big words. No need for that. Just keep it layman terms and allow them, make sure they understand everything they have to do on this network. So the more you keep it simple, the better off you're going to be.